Venezuela's electoral campaign officially begins ahead of the regional polls to be held on November 21st. Beijing condemns U.S. interference in China's internal affairs after President Tsai Ing-wen confirmed that the U.S. troops are on the island training its military. Ambassadors from different Western countries have met with Sudan's Prime Minister Abdalla Hamdo and his residence after his arrest, along with other government officials during Monday's military coup. Hello, from the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, I'm Ray Gomez. This is from the South. On Thursday, Venezuela's electoral campaign officially begins ahead of the regional polls to be held on November 21st. The president of the National Electoral Council, Pedro Calzadilla, announced that everything is ready for the start of the campaign on Thursday, where the different organizations and political forces will present the different proposals through their candidates. The official pointed out that the campaign must become a great space for debate and that the candidates must offer their messages to the national, regional, or local electorate in a responsible, honest, and a clear manner. Calzadilla also emphasized the compliance with the electoral schedule, which also consists of execution of 9 audits endorsed by technical representatives of the parties, demonstrating once again the transparency and security of the vote in Venezuela. And Guatemala police and troops deployment to TeleSUR community continues as the local inhabitants uphold a pacific demonstration against mining exploitation of their lands. On Sunday, President Alejandro Yamatei declared the state of emergency for TeleSUR after the demonstrations began against the Guatemalan nickel company for the environmental impact of the mining exploitation in their lands that threatens their livelihood. The Isabel Lake, the main source of income and sustainable for artisanal fishermen and their families, is facing heavy pollution. As a response, the government issued the curfew and deployed 1,000 troops to the site. Panama's Nurses Union protested once again against breaches in salary promises and poor working conditions that have been exacerbated by the pandemic. Around 300 nursing workers marched peacefully through the main streets of Panama City, holding banners and chanting to demand better conditions. The union has been denouncing job insecurity for over a year and demanding an improvement in conditions as well as compliance with the work agreements made with the government. During the pandemic, in which the state hired nurse and personnel to tackle the emergency, workers reported delays in the payment for several fortnightly wages, which were paid back gradually over the following months. However, the situation worsened this year, causing an almost 48-hour strike nationwide, which ended after reaching an agreement with the authorities that included the permanent contracts of those personnel hired during the pandemic and the establishment of specific dates for payment of salary debts.
The pandemic was definitely a difficult year for everyone, not only for the health sector, but for the whole world. However, we nurses worked 12 hours with the fear of bringing the infection to our homes, to our families, but knowing that it was our responsibility to go to each of these hospitals to attend the patients, to give them safety.
Barbados Prime Minister Mia Mottley said limited access to financial capital is a growing problem in the country and suggested that her government will consider legislations if banks continue with their appetite of taking risk.
Talk straight. Banks are intended to be in the business of financial intermediation, not security. If I wanted a watchman for my money, I would go and hire a security guard. But if we want money to work for the financial services sector and for development, then we need to appreciate that a loan-to-deposit ratio of 55%, when the developed world has ratios of 80%, tells me that we have people here who are watching people's money rather than working people's money. It cannot continue.
We'll be right back after this very short break. Welcome back. Beijing condemned Thursday U.S. interference in China's internal affairs after Taiwan Regional President Tsai Ing-wen confirmed that U.S. troops are present on the island training its military.
The One China principle is the political foundation of China-U.S. relations. On the Taiwan issue, the U.S. should stick to the One China principle and the provisions of the three China-U.S. joint communiques, instead of concocting something unilaterally. The international community sees clearly who is coercing the Taiwan issue. The reunification of the two sides of the strait is the historical trend and a correct path, while Taiwan independence is a historical countercurrent and a dead end. The pro-independence drive of the DPP authorities will not change the ironclad fact that Taiwan is part of China, nor can it check the international community's universal acceptance of the One China principle.
An internal investigation into United States Border Patrol agents on horseback who confronted asylum seekers in Texas remains ongoing a month after Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas committed to concluding the probe within days. The incident garnered national attention last month when photos surfaced of agents on horseback swinging long reins near people who had crossed the border near Del Rio, Texas, where around 15,000 asylum seekers had amassed under the Del Rio National Bridge. The images drew swift condemnation from senior Biden administration officials, according to the National Border Patrol Council, which raised concerns about the pace of the investigation. The agents at the center of the probe have yet to be interviewed. The U.S. government announced in September that the horse patrol would no longer be used in Del Rio, but Customs and Border Protection officials confirmed that it is still operating throughout the river sector when needed. Thursday's hearing could see Assange finally receive some justice or being extradited to the U.S., where he could face up to 175 years in prison. On Wednesday, and with no solid arguments, an attorney for the U.S. government denied that Assange's mental health was too fragile to withstand the U.S. judicial system, downplaying the diagnosed severity of Assange's conditions. Assange's attorney, Edward Fitzgerald, explained that the so-called assurances could not prevent Assange from losing family proximity, a paramount provision for his well-being. The defense team also dismissed attorney's allegations of misguided justice decision on January 4th hearing. The legal team also explained that Assange never withheld information about his relationship with Stella Morris and the existence of their two children. Instead, it was a decision of the judge to keep them out of the legal arguments to ensure their privacy.
That is what we have done to this person who told us the truth about Afghanistan, the truth about Iraq, the truth about surveillance, and revealed the incredible levels of secretive power held by the United States and indeed many other governments around the world. In a different place, in a different denomination, in a different country, he would be hailed as a whistleblower who told the truth about dangers we are all facing. Well, he told us the truth about the dangers the whole world is facing, and I think we should bear witness to Julian's bravery and his determination and demand two things. One, that he's not removed under any circumstances to the United States, and secondly, that he be released from Belmarsh so he can continue his life with his partner, with his children, and recover from the terrible ordeal that he's been through.
The partner of WikiLeaks founder told a crowd of supporters outside the UK's Ninth High Court that a decision to extradite him to the United States would be unthinkable.
Who took political asylum for fear of the political persecution that the U.S. was taking against him, for fear of torture and inhumane and degrading treatment, for fear of being put in prison for the rest of his life, for exposing the crimes of the U.S. government. And then he was kidnapped. He was kidnapped in the end on the 11th of April 2019. He was arrested by British officials and immediately the U.S. indictment was revealed. So what is the involvement of the UK government in Julian's political persecution here?
And a British fishing boat has been seized by France and another has been fined amid an escalating row over post-Brexit fishing rights. French Maritime Minister Annick Girardin confirmed that the ships first received verbal warnings in the Chine Bay. One refused to allow crew from the fishery control vessel Athos on board and was immediately escorted to the port of Le Havre by maritime police. Second boat did not have a license to fish in French waters and therefore was diverted to the quay and handed over to the judicial authority. France had warned that it would block bridge boats from some ports next week, as well as tightening checks on United Kingdom boats and trucks if a post-Brexit dispute over fishing licenses was not resolved by November the 2nd. Portugal's parliament has rejected the minority socialist government's proposed state budget for 2022, a move expected to trigger an early election and put a brake on the country's post-pandemic recovery plans. It is the first time a budget has been rejected in the country since its transition to democracy in 1974. The move ends 6 years of relative stability under Prime Minister Antonio Costa. After weeks of negotiations, the former allies of Prime Minister Costa teamed up with the Conservatives to defeat the budget bill, which included income tax cuts for the middle class and increased public investment to stimulate the post-pandemic recovery. It would also have cut the deficit to 3.2% of gross domestic product from 4.3% in 2021. President Marcelo Rebelo de Sousa warned that if the budget was blocked, he would have no option but to dissolve parliament and hold elections 2 years ahead of schedule. On Wednesday, Russia launched a cargo spacecraft headed towards the International Space Station from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. The Progress MS-18 cargo spacecraft launched for the ISS with 2.4 tons of material to supply the station's crew members. After a 2-day flight, the spacecraft will dock with station on the morning of October 30th. The spacecraft is carrying 470 kilograms of fuel, 420 liters of drinking water, 40 kilograms of oxygen, as well as health and sanitary equipment and supplies, clothing, and fresh food. We have more stories coming up after this financial break. Welcome back. On Wednesday, ambassadors from different Western countries met with Sudan's Prime Minister Abdalla Hamdo in his residence after his arrest, along with other government officials during Monday's military coup. The United Nations Integrated Transition Assistance Mission in Sudan said the ambassadors of Norway, the United Kingdom, France, Germany, the United States, the European Union, and a representative of the United Nations expressed their enthusiasm after observing the Prime Minister, who remains under house arrest, in good health. They called for the Prime Minister's full freedom and the reestablishment of the democratic order in the country. On Monday, the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces dissolved the government and assured that the military will continue the democratic transition until elections are held in July 2023. Meanwhile, protests against the military coup that has sparked international condemnation enter a fourth day. Demonstrators rebuilt barricades demolished by security forces during overnight unrest. 7 protesters have been confirmed killed since Monday by morgues in Khartoum and its sister city, Omdurman. According to health officials, more corpses have been received some with wounds caused by sharp tools. Prime Minister Abdalla Hamdo, who was detained by the military Monday in sweeping arrests of civilian leaders, remains under guard at his home. Other ministers, however, remain under full military arrest.
On behalf of everyone, we are abiding by the civil obedience entirely and fully, and we totally stand against the military rule. We want a democratic and a free life in order to move this country forward.
Syrian President Bashar al-Assad announced that the country's army will remain on the offensive until the end of the war to neutralize any aggression. The statement came during the president's visit to the Higher Military Academy headquarters in Damascus. Al-Assad said the nation's armed forces will not stand idly until the war is over, and asserted that only steadfast countries can find a place in the world. The head of state also pointed out that the United States benefits economically from war conflicts, pointed out that they're according to its doctrine, wars mean dollars, and this dollar serves the interests of United States companies. The Syrian president added that Washington will continue to promote the war despite its defeats in Afghanistan and elsewhere in the world. More than 3 instances of violence and threats of violence against Afghan journalists were recorded in the last 2 months, with nearly 90% committed by the Taliban. According to the Afghanistan National Journalists Union, more than 40% of the cases recorded were physical beatings, and another 40% were verbal threats of violence. There were also cases in which journalists were imprisoned for a day, and one of them was killed. The UN highlighted as well that most of the cases in September and October were documented in provinces outside the capital, Kabul, but 6 of the 30 cases of violence took place in the capital. During a news conference, the head of the journalist union stated that most of the instances of violence or threats of violence were perpetrated by Taliban members. 3 of the 30 cases were carried out by unknown people. We've come to the end of this news brief, but before we offer our farewells, we invite you to watch a short clip that explains how the White House tried to reshape Afghanistan to use the Central Asian nation as a geopolitical tool. For TeleSUR English, I'm Bray Gomez. Thank you for watching.